When people first hear the name Higgsfield, they often assume it's just another AI tool where you type something in and a finished video magically appears. That assumption misses what the system is actually designed to do. Before we go any further, I want to explain something important about the images you're seeing on screen right now. Every image you're looking at in this video was generated inside Higgsfield, and I'm doing that very intentionally. This is how I personally learn a new creative system. I don't start by reading menus or memorizing features. I start by creating. I go inside the program and begin generating characters, specifically characters I'm already using in my own projects. That allows me to immediately see what the system can do, how it behaves, and where it fits into my existing workflow. The characters you're seeing come from a series I'm currently producing here on YouTube called Tammy the Actress and Writer. These are not random test images. They're characters I'm actively working with. By using familiar characters, I can focus on learning the tool itself, how it responds, how flexible it is, and how it can support my process without having to invent new creative material just to test the software. That's also how I'll be teaching you Higgsfield. Throughout this series, I'll continue using characters from my existing projects to demonstrate features, show results, and explain why certain tools are useful in real-world workflows, not theoretical ones. So as we talk about Higgsfield, keep that in mind. This is not a demo in a vacuum. This is a working creator learning a system while actively using it. Now, let's talk about what Higgsfield actually is. Higgsfield exists to help creators move from an idea to a visual result with intention. It's not built around guessing what you want. It's built around helping you define what you want and guide the system step by step. Most creators don't lack ideas. They lack structure. You might know the tone you want, the kind of character, or the style of a scene, but turning that into something visual can feel scattered. Higgsfield is designed to slow that chaos down. At a high level, Higgsfield is a video generation system that combines user input, creative direction, and structured generation. Instead of starting from nothing, you're making clear decisions that shape the output. That's a critical concept to understand early. This platform isn't about pushing a button and hoping. It's about guiding the system with purpose. And that's exactly why I use it the way I do, by actively creating inside it and seeing how it supports the work I'm already doing. Now let's talk about how the Higgsfield system works at a practical level. Everything in Higgsfield begins with input. That input can be descriptive, structural, or directional, but the key point is that you're in control. The system takes what you give it and translates those decisions into visual results. The clearer your direction, the clearer the outcome. This is why it's helpful to stop thinking, what will the AI do? And start thinking, what am I asking it to do? Higgsfield responds to direction. It doesn't invent intention on its own. It's also important to understand what Higgsfield does not do. It doesn't read your mind. It doesn't assume context you haven't provided. That's by design. The system is built to keep creators involved at every step, not removed from the process. Different features inside Higgsfield work together as parts of a single system. They're meant to be used progressively, not all at once. That's why this series is broken down the way it is. In upcoming videos, I'll focus on individual features, what they do, how to use them, and why they matter, using real examples from active projects. You don't need to learn everything at once. In fact, Higgsfield works best when you approach it step by step. One feature, one function, one clear purpose at a time. This platform isn't a shortcut, it's a creative workspace. And by the end of this series, the goal isn't just that you know the tools, it's that you understand how to think inside the system. That's the foundation. Now that you understand how Higgsfield responds to direction, let's go a little deeper into what that direction actually looks like in practice. Inside Higgsfield, inputs are not just about describing what you want to see, they're about communicating intent. When you give the system an input, you're not asking it to be creative, you're giving it boundaries. Those boundaries can be visual, conceptual, or structural. But every one of them helps the system understand how to behave. This is where many people get tripped up. They assume the system works best when they keep things vague. In reality, it works best when you're clear. Clear doesn't mean complicated, it means intentional. For example, when I create characters inside Higgsfield, I'm not just testing visuals, I'm testing consistency. I'm seeing how well the system holds on to details, tone, and identity across multiple generations. That tells me whether it fits into my workflow. Higgsfield is designed so creators can adjust direction as they go. You're not locked into your first decision. You can refine, reshape, and redirect without starting over. That's an important distinction. This isn't about getting the perfect result on the first try. It's about learning how the system responds to your choices. The more you work inside it, the more predictable it becomes, in a good way. And predictability is what allows creativity to scale. Another thing to understand is that inputs don't exist in isolation. They influence each other. A small change in direction can lead to a noticeably different outcome. That's not randomness, that's responsiveness. The system is doing exactly what it's designed to do: translate decisions into visuals. Once you understand that, you stop fighting the tool and start collaborating with it. And that's when Higgsfield becomes genuinely useful, not just interesting. At this point, it's important to talk about how to approach Higgsfield mentally. A lot of people treat new tools like this as something they need to master all at once. That mindset usually leads to frustration. Higgsfield is not meant to be learned in a single sitting. It's meant to be explored. One of the most effective ways to learn the system is to treat it like a sandbox, a place where you can test ideas without pressure. That's why I work with familiar characters and ongoing projects when I'm learning. It removes one variable from the equation. I already understand the characters, so I can focus entirely on how the system behaves. That approach applies to anyone. If you're a filmmaker, work with a scene you already understand. If you're a content creator, work with a format you already use. If you're an educator, work with material you already teach. Higgsfield becomes easier when you stop asking it to invent everything for you and start using it to support decisions you've already made. Another key idea is pacing. You don't need to explore every feature to get value from the system. You only need to understand the ones that support what you're trying to do right now. That's why this series is structured the way it is. Each video focuses on one concept, one feature, or one workflow decision at a time. Not because the system is complicated, but because learning works better that way. Over time, those small pieces connect. You begin to understand how choices flow through the system, how one decision affects another, how structure creates flexibility, not limits. That's the real benefit of Higgsfield. Not speed, not automation, but clarity. By the end of this series, the goal isn't that you've memorized features. It's that you're comfortable working inside the system. And once that happens, everything else becomes optional, not overwhelming. That's when the tool starts serving you. Now that we've gone through the Higgsfield introductory series, I want to take a moment to recap what you've learned and explain how all of this fits together. We started by talking about what Higgsfield actually is and why it exists. At its core, Higgsfield is not about pressing a button and hoping for results. It's about giving creators a structured way to move from ideas to visuals with clarity and intention. We talked about why structure matters, especially when you're dealing with complex, creative decisions like characters, tone, pacing, and visual continuity. Higgsfield is designed to slow that process down just enough so you can make decisions instead of reacting to results. One important thing I explained early on is why I use existing material from my current projects to learn and teach this system. The images and characters you've been seeing were all created inside Higgsfield, using characters from a series I'm already producing here on YouTube, Tammy the Actress and Writer. I do that intentionally. By working with characters and concepts I already understand, I can focus on learning the tool itself, how it responds, how flexible it is, and how it supports an active workflow. That same approach lets me teach Higgsfield in a real-world context, not a theoretical one. We also talked about how the system works at a practical level. Everything begins with input, descriptive, structural, or directional, and those inputs shape the results. Higgsfield responds to clarity. It doesn't invent intention for you, and it doesn't assume context you haven't provided. That's by design. We discussed how different features inside the system work together and why it's important to approach learning Higgsfield step by step rather than trying to understand everything at once. This isn't a shortcut, it's a creative workspace. In later parts, we went deeper into how direction, boundaries, and refinement affect outcomes, and why predictability is actually a strength when you're trying to scale creativity. The more intentional your choices, the more useful the system becomes. The key takeaway from this entire introductory series is this: Higgsfield works best when you treat it as a process, not a trick. Coming up next, we'll start focusing on specific subjects inside the Higgsfield program. We'll break down individual features, talk about character creation and consistency, explore how images transition into video, and look at practical workflows you can actually use in your own projects. Each video will focus on one concept at a time, using real examples, so nothing feels overwhelming. If you understand what you've learned so far, you're exactly where you need to be. This foundation is what everything else builds on.